right, guys. Thanks for bearing with us. This is our first live show, like with a new system, and it's it's not like being in a studio. So, first day of the
Those were the days, huh, Nomi, when we were in studios?
Those were the days. I have like a light in my apartment.
It's never going to happen again.
I don't even want to tell you what the opposite side of this looks like. It's like I'm pressed up against my couch. I have like pillows over my microphone. It's pretty funny. So, anyways, Thomas Frank, are we? This is going right? Something's going on here.
Evidently, it is. Yeah.
Well, at least you have a nice bookshelf, Thomas.
Well, thank you. It took me years,
you
know. I was going to actually welcome you to my show. Hey, Nomi, great to see you again. Welcome to the Thomas Frank Show.
Normally, I would be happy to be on your show. So, Thomas, crazy times that we're in right now. We are doing live convention coverage, not from Radio Row, not from like a media studio, but from my apartment in Queens and your place in an undisclosed location.
I never thought I'd be nostalgic for the political conventions, but yeah. This is the first year I haven't gone to them in a very long time. I went to I've been going since '96.
Wow.
and it's not like they're really gratifying politically. They aren't, but it is, it's part of my life. I see all my old friends there, that sort of thing. Anyhow, those days are over.
I just pulled out what was all from 2016. I'm sure you're.
Oh my God! Yes, I put mine away in a box in the attic. I'm not gonna.
The presidential pass, and that like the FBI. They like clear this. It's crazy. It's literally the FBI.
And then you get special passes to go to parties and stuff like that.
And we're so cool that when you go through this process, because just to pull back the curtain a little bit, there's like the cool kids, like the lefty indie types that don't want to be like the sellouts who go to the CNN brunch, but we still go. But we just mock them the whole time.
Yeah, well, so I have many, many stories that I could tell you about these conventions, being in close proximity to important politicians, both of the Democratic and the Republican persuasion. The Republicans, by and large, throw better parties. Well, that's just because they have more money. And
they have like lobster at their parties.
Yeah, that's right. And they just don't care. They just don't care. But anyhow, it's all in the past now.
All in the past. So, Thomas, you are the knower of all things in terms of how the party ended up turning out this way. One of the things that we're trying to do on this show, and I think it's the bright side of this not being at the convention and getting distracted by the glitz and the noise, and there's always drama that happens. We can kind of drill into where does the movement go from here? How did we get to this point? And you are the author of Listen Liberal, What's the Matter with Kansas? You've been able to essentially, in a very distillable way, summarize how the party went from being the Workers' Party, or what tried to be the Workers' Party at one point, to becoming
the Party of the People. They used to call themselves. Exactly. They still do call themselves that. I'm sure if we were there in what is it? It's supposed to be Milwaukee,
right? Supposed to be. Yes, it's Milwaukee.
Yeah. If we were there, you'd be seeing all sorts of stuff about that's who they are.
Eating cheese.
Eating cheese, drinking beer, and pictures of Franklin Roosevelt, and the band would be playing "Happy Days Are Here Again," and they would every couple of years they go in this spectacle and they imagine that that's still who they are, but of course it's not the case.
Right. So. All right.
But Nomi, I have to correct you. You left one out. There's this new book that I've written. I've got a copy.
I only have it in digital form. It's not as sexy.
The people know. So the digital form is good, but you're missing the illustrations. It's the first book of mine ever to have color illustrations in it, and they're really good. It's a lot of political cartoons from the 1890s and stuff like that. Yeah, beautiful and horrifying. Horrifying.
So 1890s, when does the Democratic Party, or what we would consider the Democratic Party today, because of course there was a shift in history, when did this all start? When did the parties become a thing?
Oh, well, that goes way, way back. What the reason I start with the 1890s is because that was the last time you had a real third party effort in this country. We have third parties now, like Ralph Nader will run for president, or Ross Perot or something like,
Jill Stein.
whatever. But yeah, Jill Stein,
Before.
but it will be a single person running for president. It's not the in the 1890s. There is this group called the Populists, and they actually had governors and senators and members of Congress. And running a guy for the presidency was an afterthought. That's they had to do that because they were a political party, but that wasn't important to them. And the reason they're significant, for my purposes, is because they invented the word populism. Invented it just out of thin air one day in the 1890s. And the reason that's fascinating is because the word has been flipped upside down nowadays. And it's used by people like the New York Times and the Washington Post to signify exactly the opposite of what the original populists stood for. They were a left-wing, third-party, farmer and labor sort of, like our friends up there in Wisconsin. They're very familiar with farmer labor parties. They've had a lot of those sort of things over the years. And the populists were the original along those lines, a left-wing party. And so that's the broad outline of the story that I tell. How did the word get flipped? But along the way, we watched the Democratic Party get flipped as well. And the Republicans move in to try to take over that language of populism. You can look at a guy like Donald Trump, and I'm sure next week when the Republicans meet in, where is it? Is it Jacksonville? I don't even know.
It's Jackson. I think it's Jackson. It was moved. It was
moved. But the whole thing is just, and I don't think they're going to be in either of the two locations. They're not going to be in Jacksonville, and they're not going to be in Charlotte. I think Trump is going to speak from like the White House, or the Lincoln Memorial or something like that.
Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think it won't be Mar-a-Lago. It won't be that. He doesn't like to talk about. I mean, that's too ritzy. His whole act is that he's a man of the people himself. It's just so ridiculous when you think about it. But he is not unique. They've been doing this populist act since Nixon, and Reagan did it, Pat Buchanan did it, and now Trump. And it's not going to go away when Trump goes down to a much deserved defeat in November. Knock on wood. When Trump goes down to that much deserved defeat, there's going to be another Republican fake populist that's going to leap up to take his place. And the Democrats are going to cry some more when he beats whoever, whoever's.
Well, the polls today were tied. I mean, just a week ago, Biden was leading by 14.
No way.
I know. I don't know. I mean, so
how a man can't bungle an epidemic like this and still hope to be reelected. I mean, just on the fundamentals of it, you've got 10% unemployment, this mass die-off of small businesses. You can't, he can't be reelected in a situation like this. He's so utterly incompetent. At the end of the day, people want someone sitting in the Oval Office that knows something about how government is supposed to work, rather than a guy that just complains because his wishes aren't transformed into reality.
You're not removing the postal boxes quick enough. Get to it. Come on.
This is insane. And what I like to remind people, this has been going on for a long time. The Republican war on the Postal Service, a long time, and this is just only the latest iteration of it. Who loved the post office was the populists, the people in the 1890s. They invented, one of their inventions was rural free delivery, because it was a farmer movement. Right. And they wanted to have postal savings banks. They wanted you to be able to go into the all of these sort of things. They loved the idea of the post office. They wanted the government to run all sorts of industries in the way it ran the post office. And anyhow.
So Thomas, let's talk. I mean, for so many of our listeners who have been introduced to politics through Bernie Sanders, either last time around or this time around, I mean, this idea of neoliberalism, if you're 18 years old, it's all you've ever known. Hell, I'm 36 years old. It's all I've ever known. But But it really, it's like it brainwashed my part of the generation,
Yeah,
and we like had to break out of that. But if you're, if you're 18 years old today, you actually understand the differences between progressivism and populism and neoliberalism. So, I mean, going back to your book, Listen Liberal, which I think for the party right now, just talking about the divisions in the party, how did this all start?
Well, it goes way back. So, but if for our purposes, the important period is the late 1960s, the Vietnam War. The party was torn in two over the Vietnam War because obviously President Lyndon Johnson was a very liberal Democrat, and also the Vietnam War was his baby. And a lot of the parties sort of, at the time, the Democratic Party, and this is going to be hard for young people to understand, the Democratic Party was very, very closely identified with organized labor, with labor unions in America. This is when I was a little kid. And it was, everyone knew that. That's who the Democratic Party was. And the unions, Johnson was a great friend to them. And for their part, they backed him up. Their leadership did, anyways, on the Vietnam War, and they supported him even in this terrible, stupid undertaking. And they had the Democratic Convention in 1968, the riots going on, the country is coming apart, and the Democratic Party develops a whole sort of alternative understanding of itself when all this is over, when the dust has settled. And Hubert Humphrey lost for the presidency, by the way, the last candidate who was he was very, very close to the unions, and he lost. And the Democratic Party developed an alternate sort of a plan for itself, where they would no longer be the party of unions and of working people, but they would be the party of these extremely idealistic kids coming off of college campuses, kids like Bill Clinton and that sort of thing. Now, ironically, these kids turned out to not be quite as liberal as they as they seem to be at first, because, of course, they aren't they're not the working class. They are, these are people with good college educations, and they go into the professions, and their economic interests are really not with this sort of New Deal state. That's not who they care about. They want to succeed. They say the New Deal is over, and the Democratic Party develops this whole sort of theory of, what they call the learning class, and how the Democratic Party has to move to the right, and they have to give up on unions, they have to give up on working people, but most importantly, they have to give up on the New Deal and the legacy of Roosevelt. Now, they still want those people to vote for them, of course, but they don't want to. They don't want to spend any effort on that. That's not who they are anymore. And the rest is history. You've got people like Bill Clinton, who comes up with all these trade agreements, deregulates Wall Street, does these incredible favors for Roosevelt's old enemies. They even put Social Security on the chopping block, and they never went through with it because he got impeached. But they would have done it, they would have done it, and that would have been the Democrats.
But what I don't understand, and Joe Biden was a big part of that, and that was a big attack
he certainly
on Joe Biden.
Was. That's right.
As well as the crime bill, that was a big attack on him. Joe Biden is of that era. He is, of the New Democrats that.
Yes, he is. And you just put your finger on something that in Listen Liberal, one of the worst things that this new generation of Democrats did is they became real hawks on law and order and on locking people up. And they came up with all of these, in my mind, really, really cruel ways of law enforcement, of prosecuting the war on drugs, mandatory minimum sentences, on and on, 3 strikes rules, on and on and on. Do these terrible, terrible things that resulted in mass incarceration, in the U.S. having a bigger percentage of its population in prison than any country that has ever existed, et cetera, et cetera. And in my mind, that's probably the worst thing that these guys did. Although deregulating Wall Street is up there, the trade agreements are up there. Biden had a hand in all of it.
But why? This is what I don't understand. What was it about, especially like as they started to form in the late 70s, early 80s after, Carter into Reagan? What was the justification for shifting away from unions who had a lot of money? This wasn't and a lot
of members. Remember, they still to this day have millions and millions of people.
Exactly. So what was the point of saying, okay, we're abandoning this force and moving towards becoming more conservative and privatizing the shift to Wall Street. I've heard the justification is the Republicans started taking big money after the campaign finance laws started to weaken. They had to compete on TV because TV was expensive. But is that enough to shift the entire ethos of the party?
It shouldn't be, because there's plenty of examples in the past, and so the People Know spends a great deal of time on Franklin Roosevelt and the election in 1936, where he's outspent in a sort of astronomical way. The newspapers of America come together against him everywhere you turn. If you were a ordinary citizen in 1936, you turn on the radio and they're denouncing him again. The campaign against him is everywhere you look, and yet he wins in an overwhelming landslide, one of the greatest landslides of all time. And so what that shows, if nothing else, I mean, there's all sorts of lessons in 1936 for today. But one of the things that it shows you is that, no, you don't have to be the party with all the money. That's not necessarily the only position out there. But the New Democrats convinced themselves that it was that, well, look, Nomi, if you want to be really, really cynical about it, it's a lot more fun to be the party of money than it is to be the party of organized labor. I mean, you said it yourself. You go to the Republican convention and they're serving lobster. I went to a party at the Republican convention in 2004 that was held in the New York Yacht Club. And you know what? It was lavish. I went to a party that they had in Minneapolis in what year was that? It was 2008, and the Sarah Palin convention, where they had rented out a bar in some hotel and all they were serving was Maker's Mark. That was it. And you could get it made into all these different cocktails, but that's all they were serving. And it's insanely lavish. It's really nice being the party of money. It's so
that's all it was. Is they realized that, but back and just to
right. But let's not take that really cynical tack, because that's not the whole answer.
I mean, I think it's especially true in the Obama era, because you can get away. You can still be quote unquote woke, but also make money. But in the late 70s, they weren't even woke. I mean, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, Al Gore.
Well, Nomi, in my opinion, they aren't really woke now. It's just that's just superficial. That's just But
they're able to appeal to like a more capitalist,
but think about
diverse
it this way.
Capitalism that is like it's a way to justify their capitalism and still be Democrats and not Republicans. But in the late 70s,
right. and
none of that.
Right, but let's talk about the present for a moment, because this is how my new book ends. It ends with this chapter on what Democrats look like today. I call it the utopia of scolding, where they're both a ruling class. They're not the ruling class, because the ruling elite, this is a big country, it's very complex. There's a lot of different elites, but the liberal elite is a huge part of it. All of these people coming out of the fancy universities, the highly educated white collar professional class that is a sort of core Democratic constituency. They're not just an elite. They understand themselves to be a very righteous elite. So elites in the past there would always be a sense of guilt that they were to be a billionaire in a democracy, to be a billionaire in a country that produces people like Frank Capra, and Thomas Jefferson and that sort of thing. There's something disgusting about that, and there's something dirty about it. But to be an elite where you know that you are more moral than everybody else, and you're more enlightened than everybody else, and especially than the working class, the rank and file of democracy, those people are deplorables. They're irredeemable. They don't understand. They didn't go to good schools. They don't know the language. They're fundamentally unenlightened. They're in the grip of these pathologies. So you're not just a ruling class, but you're a better class. You're a higher quality people. To be both financially an elite and also morally an elite, it's so attractive. There's something so seductive about being that. And that's really who they are, or how they understand themselves today. And you asked, why aren't they going to change when it's so obvious? Well, maybe you didn't ask that, but we would have come to that anyway, because it's so obvious, right? Like, you're running a political party. Politics is about getting more votes than the other guy. Right. Don't you want to be the group that is, you have to be coming up with some way of doing that. Well, no, they aren't really interested in that. They've got their utopia now. They're already in it. It's incredibly satisfying to be one of these people.
They're not Trump. They're not Trump.
Exactly.
And they're very good at
and they can just wag their finger at Trump voters and laugh at them and tell them to put their goddamn mask on, you stupid morons. And I'm sorry.
Thomas
I talk about this a lot, but believe me, folks, I wear a mask. Here it is. I'm going to step outside and put this on just to make sure it still works.
Hashtag mandatory mask and universal health care. Okay. Medicare for all.
Yes.
Thomas Frank, thank you for your insights as always. But wish
Nomi, we have just begun. We're just getting started here.
Wait. I've got a proposal. Our show's an hour long. Next week we're doing the RNC, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it.
We'll finish up.
Hell yes.
Thanks, Thomas. Check out Thomas Frank's new book. Got it? Lift it up. Show it to everybody.
The people know.
The people know. You can get it at any independent bookstore that delivers. And if you really want to.
Oh, one other thing, Nomi, if you go on my website on tcfrank.com, I've got all the illustrations from the book there, so you can check it out. You get a good sense of what it's about just from that.
I can't wait. And also, if you haven't read Listen Liberal and What's the Matter with Kansas, basically every few years, Thomas decides to remind us why the Democrats have lost their way.
And the Republicans, they're both lost. It's all lost, Nomi.
The Republicans are extinct. They're just, really good at holding on to power, having 4 people in control.
Yes,
Ben Shapiro is the future of the Republican Party.
Oh my God! Don't even.
Next week. All right. Thank you so much, Thomas.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.